Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a really specific milestone in the educational journey.
hmm
It's that transition that happens when a learner moves from pre-primary, or what some call foundation, into year one.
It's one of the biggest shifts in the early years curriculum, for
Mhm.
sure. It's often seen as the point where, learning changes from that early childhood style into something that looks a bit more like school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because it's such a visible shift, there's a lot of talk, a lot of speculation about what actually changes. Is it just a switch that gets flipped?
Does the whole world change overnight?
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to look at the actual documents. We've
Mm.
got the Western Australian Curriculum and Assessment Outline, some research on age-appropriate pedagogies, and the Foundations for Success Guides.
And we're just going to look at the mechanics of it all. What stays, what changes, and I think importantly, how the curriculum itself actually describes this period.
Okay, so let's start with that big picture. Looking at these sources, how do they frame this move? Is it a hard border between pre-primary and year one?
Not at all, actually. The documents are really careful to frame year one not as a totally fresh start, but as a bridge.
A bridge.
Yes, it's explicitly designed around consolidating and applying the skills that were learned in pre-primary.
So it's more of a gradient than a cliff edge.
Precisely. I mean, the curriculum gets that kids don't just biologically change because the calendar flips to a new school year, but the structure of how they learn, that does go through a very specific evolution.
Let's dig into that. The structure. I think the number one question is always about the environment. Pre-primary is all about, fluid movement, sand pits, open-ended stuff. Does year one just mean sitting at a desk all day?
Well, if we look at the guidelines on age-appropriate pedagogies, the short answer is no. The environment stays active, but the way instruction happens, that shifts. So in pre-primary, learning is mostly play-based with what they call embedded adult guidance. The teacher's on the floor, guiding things as they happen naturally.
And then in year one,
In year one, that guidance becomes more intentional and explicit. The sources talk about a move towards short periods of focused instruction.
let's define short. What does the research actually say is appropriate for a year one kid?
The guidelines are pretty clear here. They suggest about 5 to 10 minutes.
Wow, that is very specific.
It is. The expectation isn't that a year one student is sitting through a long lecture. In fact, the guidelines state pretty clearly that sitting still for long periods is not required. It just doesn't align with their development.
Okay, so the day is built around these little bursts of direct teaching.
Exactly. You might have a short burst introducing a math concept, and then it's sandwiched right between active, hands-on ways to apply it.
So the hands-on part doesn't go away, it just becomes the way you practice what was just explicitly taught.
Correct. The materials, the blocks, the counters, all of that, they are still central to the learning. For numeracy especially, concrete materials are the main way you learn in year one.
Right.
The curriculum doesn't expect abstract mental math yet. They're meant to be physically moving things around to understand quantity.
This actually brings up a really interesting point for the home educators listening. The Foundations for Success source touches on the home environment. How does this structural shift work when you're not in a classroom of 25 kids?
Yeah, the documentation here is fascinating. It explicitly says that home educators do not need to copy a classroom schedule.
Because the one-on-one ratio is so different.
Exactly. That classroom structure is partly for managing a large group. At home, the source says you don't need, daily written work in every single subject in a rigid way. You can integrate things.
Like through cooking or gardening.
Yes, cooking, gardening, building something. The structure the curriculum wants in year one is about the intent of the learning, not what's on the timetable on the wall.
So whether you're at school or at home, the real shift is about being more intentional with the learning goals, but keeping the physical activity and the hands-on stuff.
That is the balance they're aiming for.
Okay, let's move on to academic expectations. We've got the environment sorted. What about the output? If we look at literacy in the WA curriculum for year one, what's the actual standard?
The focus in year one is very heavily weighted towards foundations and decoding. It is not about fluency in the way we might think of, reading a novel.
Decoding, so that's the mechanics of reading.
Yes, exactly. The requirement is that children continue to learn phonics connecting sounds to letters. They're expected to blend those sounds to read simple words and, importantly, to read short, decodable texts.
I want to pause on decodable texts. How is that different from just, say, a regular picture book?
That's a great question. A standard picture book might use all sorts of complex language, and the child often has to guess from the pictures. A decodable text is engineered. It only uses the sound codes the child has already been explicitly taught.
Oh, okay.
So if they know the sounds for S, A, T, P, I, and N, the book will only have words made from those letters like sat, pin, ant, and so on.
So it's designed to give them a win. It validates the code they just learned?
Exactly. It prioritizes accuracy over speed. The sources are really clear that understanding how the code works is the goal for year one. A child slowly sounding out CATA is doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
And on the flip side, what about writing?
The expectations are very similar. They are expected to start writing simple sentences and often with unjoined letters. There's no requirement for perfect cursive or anything like that at this stage. It's about getting an idea across.
I saw the term inventive spelling in the research note.
Yes, and this is such a key concept. The curriculum allows for inventive spelling because it actually shows phonemic awareness. If a child writes phone as F-O-N,
Right.
they're wrong by the dictionary, but they're right in their sound analysis. They heard the sounds and they mapped them to letters they know.
So at this stage, the curriculum values that sound analysis more than the official spelling rule.
Correct. The official rules come later. Year one is about having the confidence to get your idea from your brain onto the paper using the code that you know.
Let's switch gears to numeracy. You mentioned the blocks earlier. What's the big cognitive shift that happens here?
The shift is from counting to number sense.
And how do we tell those two apart?
Well, counting is sequential, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Number sense is more structural. It's understanding how numbers are built. A huge focus in year one is on the part-whole concept.
Can you give us an example of that?
Sure. It's understanding that the number 6 is a whole that can be made of different parts. It can be 4 and 2. It can be 3 and 3. It can be 5 and 1.
So it's not just memorizing that 4 plus 2 equals 6.
No, not at all. It's understanding the flexibility of that quantity. This is why those manipulatives, the blocks, are so critical. They aren't just playing. They are physically taking the number 6 apart to see what it's made of. This is the foundation for algebra, way down the line.
And what about measurement? I saw a note in there about informal units.
Yes, another great example of age-appropriate learning. They don't start with rulers and millimeters, which are really abstract. They measure using informal units like pop sticks or paper clips or even their own feet.
This desk is 10 pop sticks wide.
Exactly that. It teaches the concept of measurement. Comparing an object to a consistent unit without getting bogged down in the complexity of a standard ruler. You build the logic before you introduce the formal tool.
I want to touch on content. I think parents and educators often wonder if there's a specific syllabus of, general knowledge. Does year one demand that you learn about space or dinosaurs?
This is such a common point of confusion. The Western Australian curriculum defines the skills, but the context, the topic, is flexible.
So there isn't a mandatory year one dinosaurs unit.
Nope. One classroom might choose Under the Sea as their theme for a term. Another might do My Community. Both of those classrooms will use their topic to teach the mandatory skills, like observing changes, categorizing things, writing sentences, measuring. The topic is just the vehicle.
That seems really smart. It's designed to keep engagement high.
It is. It allows the teacher or the parent to follow the child's actual interests. If a kid is obsessed with construction vehicles, you can teach all the year one outcomes through that lens.
Okay, we've talked structure, we've talked academics. Now, the method. We said pre-primary is play-based. Does play just stop to make room for all this focused instruction in year one?
It definitely does not stop, but it does evolve. The research source we have from the International Journal of Research and Innovation talks about a concept called guided play.
Guided play. How is that different from the, totally open-ended play we see in the early years?
So, open-ended play is completely child-led. There's no specific learning goal. Direct instruction is completely adult-led. Guided play sits right in the middle. The child is still leading the activity, but an adult has set up the environment or maybe steps in to scaffold a specific learning outcome.
What does that actually look like?
Okay, imagine a role play scenario, like a shop. In open play, kids just pretend. In guided play, the adult might come over and ask, oh, how much do these apples cost? Or, I need to buy 3 red apples and 2 green ones, please.
So the adult injects the math concept into the child's story.
Precisely. The child is still in control, they're still playing, but the adult is making sure that the play involves counting or sorting or negotiation. That study, by the way, found that 93% of educators see this kind of hybrid approach as essential for hitting those academic targets while keeping kids engaged.
It sounds like it's another one of those bridges we were talking about. You're using the vehicle of play to deliver the curriculum.
And it serves a biological purpose, too. The sources are really emphatic about this. Play is the main way that children practice their executive functions.
Executive function.
Yeah.
That's the brain's kind of management system, right?
Yes, impulse control, working memory, planning. To play a game with rules, you have to inhibit your impulse to just grab a toy. You have to wait your turn. You have to remember the rules. These are the exact self-regulation skills you need for schoolwork.
So keeping play in year one isn't just a nice to have to keep them happy. It's actually building the cognitive hardware they need for the focused instruction parts of the day.
That's it, exactly. You can't lecture a child into having better impulse control. They have to practice it, and play is the most motivating context for that practice.
Which leads us perfectly into the idea of readiness. If you're looking at this transition and wondering if a child is prepared for year one, what are the actual indicators? The Foundations for Success document is pretty clear on this.
And what's so interesting is that the indicators are almost all developmental, not academic. It isn't about whether they can already read a book or count to 100.
So what are the top skills on that list?
The first one is the ability to listen to short instructions. And we're talking 1 or 2 steps. Please get your bag and put it in the tub.
Just functional listening.
Yes. The second one is resilience, but specifically the ability to recover from frustration with support. It doesn't mean they never get frustrated. It just means that when something's hard, they can be coached through it instead of just shutting down completely.
That little phrase, with support, that's key.
Yeah.
It's not about being totally independent yet. It's about being responsive to guidance.
Correct. Another huge one is oral language. The consensus in all these documents is that oral language is the bedrock for all the literacy work we were just talking about.
Because writing is just speech written down.
Exactly. If a child can speak in a sentence or answer a simple question about a story or describe what they're doing, they have all the raw material they need for reading and writing. The curriculum basically suggests conversation is the best prep for year one.
And socially, year one usually means more group work.
Coping with small group learning is a big readiness skill. Can they take turns? Can they share things? Can they work next to someone else? These social situations just happen more often in year one, so being able to navigate them is part of it.
It's a very functional list. It seems to be less about what they know and more about how they function.
That is a perfect way to put it. The academic content, the phonics, the number sense, that's what year one is for. They go to school to learn that stuff. They don't need to know it before they get there.
Yeah.
The readiness skills are just the tools that let them participate in the learning.
So to kind of pull all this together, the transition to year one is a structural shift from that embedded guidance to more intentional, explicit instruction. But it holds on to the hands-on methods, the flexible topics, and very much keeps play as a core learning mechanism.
And it prioritizes depth over speed. Whether it's decoding a word or taking apart a number, the goal is a solid, secure foundation, not a race.
It really does sound like that bridge metaphor is the most accurate way to see it. It connects that developmental early childhood phase to the more structured learning of primary school, but without, creating a chasm between them.
That is exactly how the curriculum documents present it.
So one final thought before we wrap up. We talked about how play builds executive function, that impulse control and attention. It suggests that keeping play in the year one classroom or the homeschool day isn't just a fun activity. It's actually a strategy for academic success.
Yeah.
If we let them practice those self-regulation skills in play, are we actually making them better able to handle those short bursts of focused instruction?
It's a symbiotic relationship. The play supports the work, and then the work gives them new ideas and concepts to explore back in their play.
A continuous loop.
Well, thank you for walking us through the documents.
My pleasure.
And thank you for listening to the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.